Welcome to my podcast, Today's Dream, Tomorrow's Reality. My name is Vickiepoole. I'm a master transformational coach and hypnotist specializing in habit change. And this podcast is sponsored by The Enlightened Peach. And it's all about embracing our mosaic life. And some of you may ask, what is a mosaic life anyway? Well, it is recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, the indifferent, have all come together to make us who we are. Change any one thing and we are different. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections and celebrate who you are. This podcast is unedited and raw, just like life. And I am your host, and I have a special guest that I'll introduce in just a moment. But before I do, I would love to ask you to leave a comment or a question for her. And remember to like, subscribe, and share. So now, let's get started. So this beautiful woman is Julie Trainer, and we know each other because we are both in a particular group where I met her, and I know a little bit about her story, but I am so excited to dive in and get to know her a little bit more. And so, Julie, I'm just going to ask you to do a little quick clip of the cliff notes, I guess, of who you are, and then we'll dive into questions and getting to know each other.
Sure. Thank you, Vickie. I'm super excited to be here. So I recently started a podcast, and it's called The Hidden Gifts of Loss. And how that came about was I ended up taking care of my mom, and she passed in 2020 from pancreatic cancer in the middle of the pandemic. And then 1 year later, my dad passed as well from complications around COVID. So what happened as a result of all that was that I went through this personal transformation where I realized, you know what, life is short. Got to go after what you want and, stop holding yourself back. So along those lines, I just started taking risks. And one of the things that I've always done is journal. So I journaled my way through those experiences and working on turning that into a memoir.
Oh,
So
nice. Yeah,
yeah.
beautiful. Well, as you were saying that, one of the things that came to mind is I saw this thing the other day, and I can't remember if it was, I'll look at so many places. I can't remember if it was on Facebook or Instagram or where it was, but it said, when you get to the end of life, you're not wishing that you hadn't been walking around with shorts and jiggly legs. You're not wishing that you had a flatter stomach. You're not wishing that your arms weren't flabby. And those are not the things that you're wishing for. You're wishing that you had put that bathing suit on and got in the water regardless. You're wishing you'd worn that sleeveless top because it made you feel good, regardless of whether your arms were fat. And it went through this whole thing. And as it was going, I thought, man, oh man, there have been so many times in my life that I have said no to things that maybe I was afraid somebody would see that I had some stuff around my stomach, and maybe I was afraid, or they might think I'm not smart, or there's so many times. But when we get down to it, our life is magnificent. And no matter whether you live to be 100, it's still short, right?
Yeah.
And so it's amazing, as you were talking about that, how it just made that thing pop in my head about that little blip of something that really touched me deeply. And so I can't wait to dive in and learn a little bit more about your story and so I'd kind of like to back up a little bit before all this happened, if you don't mind.
No, absolutely.
Okay. So first of all, um, how old were you when you got your first kiss?
Oh my goodness. How old was I? Well, the first one that mattered, I was 15.
Okay. Well, we want to go with the one that matters.
Yeah.
Do you remember their name?
Her name was Brenda White.
Ooh. And if
Mhm.
Brenda's watching now,
my God, that's wow, that was not a question that I was expecting.
I don't know
That's
why I
fun.
ask it either.
I
I've
love
never asked anybody anything like that in my life. So, and for some reason, it just popped in my head. So, thank you for sharing that.
sure.
But what I really want to dive into is as you were growing up and you had your mom and your dad, were they married as you were growing up? So they
Yeah,
were
they were
married when
married.
they passed, right?
Yeah, they were.
Okay. All right.
60, almost 60 years they were married.
Wow. Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing to me. Amazing.
Mhm.
Amazing.
Mhm.
So, as you were growing up, did you have good relationships with them?
Well, so my mom, yes, my mom and I were close. My mom was she was controlling, and it came from her OCD and her fears. She was afraid of a lot of things, and
Mm-hmm.
she passed that along, to us. And then my dad, on the other hand, was he was kind of a conundrum. He was either very quiet or he was very angry, and he always seemed just really dissatisfied with everything. So I have a younger brother, and so we were kind of caught between these two ways that neither one of us really wanted to be and weren't necessarily enjoying, which is not to say that there wasn't fun and there wasn't humor and there
Right,
wasn't
right.
joy, but the gist of it was that there was my scary dad and my OCD controlling mom.
Well, I can say for me, I don't think my mom was OCD or anything like that, but my dad, he wasn't scary, but he was so moody that, I could walk into the house when I got out of school and I'd walk in the house, I could feel, whew, it's a little tense in here right now. I'm going to my room, you know,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
it was like it wasn't that he was going to be mean or anything, but he could make you very uncomfortable. He could
mm,
make you feel like very small. And,
mhm.
and it was like if he's not in the best mood, the whole energy of the house was changed.
Yes, and you learn to read that energy real quick
Yes. Yeah.
as a
And
young
and I
child.
think that's one of the reasons I can read energy so well now is because as a
Mhm.
young child, I had to.
You
I
had to.
wanted to make sure that I could get out of the path of whatever the hell was going on and not have to
Yes,
experience it. Right. So that's
absolutely.
one of the gifts that I got from him being so moody, I guess. I'm always trying to find the gift in whatever it was.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so with as you were growing up, so um did you know you were gay when you were real young, or is that something you realized as you got older?
No, I realized that as I got older. Had crushes on boys, and everything. And that's why I said that first kiss didn't really count. That was like eighth grade graduation at Disneyland at the haunted house ride. This little skinny little boy. He said, "I'm
Yeah,
gonna kiss you in the haunted house ride." No, but no, it came as a complete shock to me.
really, really.
Yeah, that I had this crush on this girl. She was a senior and I was a freshman, and we were both in choir and we were both in musical, and I had no idea. I was like, what is happening here? But it was an undeniable, very strong attraction, which of course my mother being a religious woman, her big concern was that, I was going to go to hell because of this, and all of that. So it was definitely a struggle as a young person to try to come to terms with that identity. And then I actually was married to a man for I forget how many years, but I just know that I got divorced in 2009, and it was and that
Yeah.
was a good thing.
Well, I have some
Um,
friends that they've got
yeah,
they were married to men and they had children and all that, and then they got to a certain place like this isn't going to work anymore, and then they said, okay,
yeah. So I actually met my wife, who I've been with for 22 years now. I was still
nice.
married to my daughter's father when I met her.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like, yeah, I guess I dipped a little bit into each to each side, right? But yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I didn't know. I didn't know until I knew.
Wow. Well, it's funny because my daughter's gay and she came up to me when she was in middle school and she said, "Mom, what would you say if I said I liked girls instead of boys?" And I would say, well, how do you know? She says, I just know. And I said, well, have you had sex? And she said, no. I said, okay. And luckily, I come from a family of hairstylists. What are we inundated with usually is gay men and women, right? I don't know
Yeah,
why.
exactly.
Creative people
Absolutely.
tend to do this kind of thing,
Hmm.
you know?
Yes.
Um, but so nobody was ever non-accepting of any of that. And so, and she might have had a different experience like in school and different things like that, but not in the family. But I
Hmm.
know, it's got to be uncomfortable sometimes because as if it's a couple, it's a man and a woman couple, and they kiss in the restaurant or they kiss, out in the public, nobody thinks anything of it. But have a same-sex couple do the same thing, it's like you can almost hear the gasp in the room.
Hmm.
And it's like, what
Yeah.
the heck?
Right.
It's bizarre, really. Um, and so I didn't want to get off on that tangent too much because that's not all of who you are, but it was like, it was just curious. And I've got one more
Yeah.
curiosity, if you don't mind indulging
I,
me.
I'm an open book, Vickie.
Okay, okay. So how did you meet her? What's her name, by
Oh,
the way?
well, her name is Leslie. And
Leslie.
oh
Okay.
my gosh, this is the best story. So,
Okay. Well, I'm glad I
um,
asked.
yeah, so I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up in a town called El Segundo, and it's in Southern California. It's a little beach city. And so my wife, so I moved to Ohio when I got married the first time, and then she moved to Ohio for a relationship as well. And 6 months after she got here, that relationship ended. My relationship had been ending for a really long time, and ultimately, I was selling cosmetics in a network marketing company at the time, and I went to this woman,
Oh,
and she
which
was an I.
cosmetics was it?
It was Arbonne.
Okay, I'm familiar with that one. All right, just
Yeah.
keep going. Sorry.
So no, hey, it's okay. So I was trading a lipstick for an I Ching reading. I don't know if you say I Ching or I Ching, but
I
anyway, I was
Ching. I
having a
believe it's
reading
I
with
Ching.
I Ching. Yeah. So I was having a reading with this woman, and just out of the blue, she says, "You need to go to the Unity Church on Palm Sunday." And I was just like, okay, that is completely random. So random, in fact, that I said, okay, I'll go. What have I got to lose, right?
Yeah.
And I went, and there was this Rainbow Unity group, and I never go to groups. I was just not a group person. And I was like, well, you know what? This is so weird. I'm just gonna go all the way down this rabbit hole. And I went to the group, and everybody in the group, I start talking and saying where I'm from. And they're all like, you should come back next week. You have got to meet Leslie. Well, it turns out Leslie was from California as well. And we actually lived 2 miles apart.
Oh,
She used to,
wow.
yeah,
Talk
she used
about
to shop.
synchronicities,
Isn't
right?
that wild, right? She used to buy groceries at the grocery store I worked in when I was first in college. And also she used to come to one of the restaurants I worked in. I worked my way through college waitressing, right? So we start talking, and it's just uncanny, all these coincidences that we had. And my daughter was 5 at the time. Immediately, Leslie and my daughter Nicole had this bond too. And the first time we talked for 3 hours in a Borders bookstore, which they don't have those anymore. But
I know. It
we
was my
literally felt
favorite
like, oh
bookstore.
God, I love going there and just getting coffee and just
Me
reading.
too.
And oh my God, yeah. We literally felt like energy was just spinning around us.
Oh,
And
wow.
and kind of, yeah, like the rest is history. And my
Oh,
ex-husband had
man.
already said, you should just go meet
That makes me
somebody.
want to have a meeting with somebody.
Right, right, yeah. Just it's one of those things when it's
Maybe
meant
I
to
need to
be,
get me
the
an I
universe
Ching
just
reading. Maybe that's
go
what
get
I
an
need.
itinerary. Oh my God. So yeah, we've been together for 22 years, and we've been legally married since we were allowed to be legally married. I don't, was it 2004? I can't even
I
remember.
don't even know.
And she helped me raise my daughter, and I couldn't have raised my daughter without her. And yeah.
Ah, that is beautiful, beautiful.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
sharing that.
Oh my
So
gosh,
anybody
thank you
that's
for
watching or
asking.
listening, there is hope. Go for an I Ching reading or something like that and listen to what the hell they tell you to do, right?
Exactly.
And it's like I love listening to intuition too, because there's sometimes our intuition will say, don't go to that same grocery store you always go to this other one. And sometimes we'll ignore that, but there
Mhm,
might be the perfect person for us to meet, whether it's a professional setting or a personal setting or whatever, it might be the perfect person. And so I think it's
mhm.
beautiful that because you could have very easily said, hogwash,
Uh-huh. Completely.
right? And then
Because
your life
it
would be
was
so
so
different right
random.
now.
It
Of
would be,
course,
oh my gosh,
you might
so
have met
different.
in a different context because you were in close proximity, you know?
Hmm.
So it may
Hmm.
be that God, the universe had been trying to put you in each other's path many, many times.
Yeah, and we both feel like it wouldn't have been the right time.
Yeah.
Like where
Yeah.
we both were in our lives previously, it wouldn't have been quite the right time for us to meet.
Yeah. Isn't
And
it
then,
beautiful?
and it was, yeah, yeah.
Ah, I just really want to honor that. I really
Oh,
do.
thank
That
you,
is
Vickie.
just
Thank
beautiful. I
you.
love that. You know,
Thank you.
I am single. I've been single for quite a long time now. And for a long time I've said I don't even want a relationship. I'm busy with my stuff. I'm happy with me. I'm good. And
Mhm.
then for some reason lately I've been having this feeling of, maybe it would be okay to have a relationship with someone. Maybe, but I'm not really stepping out much with it. And so I'm in the challenge with Stacy, the singles group thing. And then
Okay.
there's the book coming up that we're doing the book club. And so
Yeah.
I'm thinking, maybe it's the right time to at least dive into some of these nuances. And I just had a person that shared in my group, and it was a class about how to communicate before you fall in love, and
Mm.
so that you can bypass a lot of the angst that you get from not being able to communicate effectively. So there's all these
Oh,
things that are stewing and brewing around me, to kind of help me be
interesting.
better at it. So we shall
Yeah.
see what comes, but I know if it's the right time, it will happen, and it'll
Mhm.
be beautiful.
Mhm.
But less about me,
Yeah.
more about you.
No, I like hearing about you too.
So after you met, you're married, and then how long had you guys been married before you had to start taking care of your mom?
So that was 4 years ago, so it would have been 18 years. And incidentally, my mom absolutely adored Leslie.
Oh,
She,
nice.
whatever her thing was, making peace with that. She saw how happy I was. She saw how happy Nicole was and how good Leslie, how good she is to me. And so my parents loved Ohio State football.
Mhm.
That was their team. And after Leslie likes football too, I've never really liked football that much, but her and my mom would text during Ohio State games. So it was so cute. And
Oh, that's
when
beautiful.
it was, except that sometimes my mom she would text like the score ahead of time. Which, wait, she's on the West Coast, Leslie, we're on the East Coast. So I don't even know, but she'd be like, why is your mom telling me this? And my mom, bless her heart, my mom, when she texted, she would text like paragraph long texts.
Yeah, yeah.
But because her middle finger was very like arthritic and kind of bent, she would accidentally hit send all the time before she meant to. And she texted with one finger, this was the
Uh-huh.
only finger she texted with. So you're thinking, how is it that you can write this long of a text with one finger? And then she'd take the time to write, oh, darn it, I didn't mean to hit send. So it was just so cute, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, we found out on January 3rd of 2020. So, and I taught my mom how to make a Bitmoji. It's like the little cartoon of you, like it's, yeah. So I taught her that, and of course she just loved that. And so she had sent this cute Bitmoji text on New Year's Eve, and it was holding balloons, and it said, "I hope 2020 will be a great year for all of us." And then 3 days later, I got the text where the Bitmoji was sad, and she said, "I found out what's wrong with me." And then my mom was a 10-year breast cancer survivor. So
Okay.
that
So
was
it
the
wasn't
day
her
that
first rodeo, right?
it wasn't her first rodeo. And I, for a bunch of reasons, wasn't actually able to go out to California and like take care of her when she had breast cancer. She had a lot of support, but I wasn't able to do that at that time. Anyway, so Leslie was the one that said, "You got to go out there, don't even hesitate." She got online and made me reservation and everything. And I went out on Valentine's Day of 2020, and uh, thought I was going to stay for 10 days until my mom had her first and what turned out to be her only chemo, because she was stage 4 when they found it. that's one of those things that they don't usually find until it's too late, because your pancreas is so small and it's so deep in there that you don't have any symptoms until it's spreading to the other organs. And that's what causes all the pain. So yeah, Leslie encouraged me to go. My daughter left her job. She was working as an archaeology tech out in the field in Texas, and
Oh,
she
that
wasn't,
sounds exciting
I know,
too.
it's very
Doggone,
interesting.
girl. I want to come hang
Really
out with you guys.
interesting. Yeah, hang out with us. We're fun. You seem fun too, Vickie. Oh my gosh. So anyway, yeah, I went out there on Valentine's Day and thought I was going to stay for 10 days. And then it ended up she couldn't handle chemo. It made her even worse. And then we all know what happened in March of 2020. Everything went on lockdown. So one kind of the way that I mean, it was insane. We were there for 10 weeks, my daughter and I. We had way less support than you would have had if it was not a pandemic.
Right.
And if I hadn't gone when I did, all the flights were canceled. So I might not have been able to go. So I tried to find things to be grateful for
Right.
during that process. I always say when I'm talking about my hidden gifts of loss, is that if it's all you can do to find one good thing that day, just find one good thing, and try to
Yeah.
focus on that. So that's how I ended up in that situation. But I am
Yeah.
so grateful that I got those ten weeks with her,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It probably was just so amazing for her to have you there, you know?
Because there's no way my dad was basically no help at all. And he would have been no help to her. And I knew, not only did I know that I wanted to do it, but I also knew that I was the only person that could do it. So it was very much like that hero's journey. You get that call and you're like, whoa, am I up to the task? But you also
Hmm.
know that you have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you choose, because even though some people have to do it, they still make a different choice,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so your choice was to follow through with your hero's journey and be there for your mom. And
Hmm.
oh my gosh, I'm sure that made her a last time on this earth so much better than it would have been otherwise.
Yeah. That was our mission, my daughter and I. My mom was somebody who always put everybody else first. Even when she would ask you for something, she'd say, "Oh, if it's not too much trouble, when you have time, could you bring me some ginger ale?" And it's like, Mom, this is why we're here. Of course we have time. There's nothing more important to me than bringing you ginger ale right now. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's what we did. That's what me and my daughter did. And she simultaneously obviously declined, but it also you could hear it. She began to believe she deserved what she wanted, what she was asking for from us.
Mhm.
Because she didn't really get that from my dad. And my brother lives out there too, very close by, but he wasn't going to be able to spend 10 weeks living in that house taking care of her. He has a younger son and all this kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, it made it very, very different. And even my dad, has never been like a demonstrative person, he even said, not directly to us, but he said to one of the hospice nurses, I couldn't do this without them. So
Oh,
indirectly, that was a compliment for us
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And occasionally he would say thank you when we made dinner, which we made dinner every day because it was a pandemic. There
Right.
wasn't a takeout. Her friends weren't bringing soup anymore.
Yeah. 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 That's
Yeah.
some of the things that you don't think about too, you know?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was like the universe was kind of like, oh, you know what? Just to make this even more interesting,
Yeah.
while
We're
your
gonna
mom's
we're
dying,
gonna shut down the world so that this
shut
is
everything
all you
down.
can do.
Yeah, yeah. And in some ways, that was a hidden gift too, because we were so focused on that. We were just in our own little bubble, and there was nothing else to do. There were no other distractions but to take care of my mom.
Yeah.
My distraction was I walked the dog every day, and I would walk the dog down to the ocean, but you couldn't go to the ocean because the beaches were closed too.
Yeah, I
So me and the
know.
dog, we would just sit up on the hill and we would just look at the ocean together, and their dog, so cute.
So where's that dog now?
Well, my brother ended up taking the dog. Her name is Floppy. Me and my daughter call her Flipper. Flipper, Flopper, she's got a lot of
Whatever.
names, but she was my parents' dog, and my brother's wife didn't want a dog. My little nephew Luke was very close to the dog. My parents almost kind of got that dog so Luke would have a dog to grow up with, and his wife, she just wasn't raised around animals, and she said, well, if we take that dog, it's probably going to sleep in the garage. And of course my daughter and I were just horrified. This dog, she was a bed sleeper, and she had her own
Hmm.
couch. So they took the dog, and it took them a while to get used to being dog owners, but now she loves the dog and walks the dog, and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's all good now with the dog.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, um, a lot of the stuff that when you're talking about all this stuff, it's not the same, but it kind of reminds me of, Laura Carney's book,
Mhm.
her bucket list,
Yeah,
that she did of her father's. But you were able, because that situation is a lot different. It was an accidental death and everything, but you were able to do almost like a bucket list thing with your mom because you were able to spend all of that enormous amount of time there just loving on her and caring on her, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. I had Laura Carney on my podcast too. It was so fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so one of the things that happened, and this is kind of the beginning of my memoir, and it's actually, I've written an essay. It's kind of a mini memoir that I'm submitting to this contest this year, and I'm really excited
Oh,
about that because it's taken me
exciting.
several years to get up the courage and feel like the piece was good enough. But the first night I was at my mom's house, I was watching her get ready for bed. My mom, like I said, she was OCD and she had a lot of weird little habits. She always brushed her teeth in the kitchen. She never washed her hair in the shower because she was afraid of getting water in her face. She never learned how to swim. So she just had all these weird, quirky little things that drove me crazy as a young person. Like if we went to the mall, we always took the same route. And it was the route with the most traffic lights. And I thought, why are we going this way? We could go that way. It's prettier. There's no stops. Well, I'm watching her brush her teeth at the kitchen, and then all of a sudden she comes over to the stove and she grabs the burner handles like this and she rocks back and forth, almost like she's doing Tai Chi, touching each set of handles. And she did it three times. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I thought I knew all the rituals, but I didn't know about this one. And I'm looking at her and I've got this look in my face, like, she says, I know I'm OCD, but this is the way I've kept the house from burning down all these years. And like in that moment, all of a sudden I had all this compassion for my mom because it hit me that what just looked like really weird behavior to me, to her was survival. It was necessary that she did these things. And I just thought, what a huge burden, that she was carrying. And because of that, there was almost like this instant transformation where nothing she did for the rest of her life, those 10 weeks, nothing got on my nerves. Nothing pushed my buttons. Nothing triggered me.
Oh, beautiful.
Just saw her through nothing but compassion.
Yeah, totally
And that
different
was a
lens.
huge blessing for me because I could have been really annoyed. I mean, my intention was not to be, right? But I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know, just the way things, that was the thing about it. That's why I talk about the hidden gifts. The way things unfolded, even though it was not ideal circumstances by any means, little things happened that just made you go, whoa,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
And like I was talking about my dad's energy in the house, she probably felt a totally different energy with you after that,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it
she
might have
really
helped
did.
relax her a little bit, knowing that the things that she did were okay.
Yeah, quite possibly. I
Yeah.
mean, we definitely brought a different vibe,
Yeah.
into that house. And I mean, interestingly, I also had really strong PTSD every time I went into their house because of the
Mm,
way that my dad was when we were growing up.
Yeah.
even though he's an old man now and I'm a grown woman, if he started yelling, it would still trigger those like body memories,
Oh yeah, yeah, yep. The body keeps score. We're
the body
always,
keeps
it's
score.
always there, right? That's
Yeah.
one of the things I help people with hypnosis a lot of times is to be able to, they don't forget the thing that happened, but they can take the charge out of it. So that doesn't trigger them anymore. They can
Hmm.
see it and say, oh, yep, experience that. It's going to stay away, but it doesn't give you that feeling anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I, I recently, over the last 9 months, lost 40 pounds, and I did it with hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
There's this woman, her name is Rita Black, and she has this, her program is called the Shift Weight Mastery. And I had never, I was a psychology major and a hairdresser. And, so like I understand a lot about like how the brain works and, all that stuff. But like I had never really done hypnosis. And that's why it it works, because you have to experience it before you can be it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And, her little mantra has really got in my head. And it was the first time I've ever been able to lose weight, like, and stay consistent with something. So I love that. I'm interested to hear more about,
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
hypnosis and how even like you came about doing that. And I know that you're a hairdresser, and I know that I'm not interviewing you here, but my podcast. I mean, of course I want to hear about it though. I think it's fascinating. How
Yeah.
long have you been doing that?
I've been a hypnotist now for about 4 years, I think. I lose track because I started out as a health coach. But that's been like almost 10 years ago, I think. Yeah, about 10 years ago. And then I went to a life coach and then a master transformational coach. And then I decided I needed to do just one more thing because I could see that things were evolving and people were getting changes along with myself, but it was like it felt like I was beginning to slide back into some of those old behaviors. And I thought, okay, there's got to be one more thing I need. And that's when I
Mm.
started into the hypnosis. And also, and one of the things I was sharing in my group not too long ago is that sometimes I look at myself now because I still would like to lose, or like to release about 30 pounds. Um,
Mhm.
and sometimes I'll fall into that trap of, well, oh my gosh, I can't believe I still want to release the 30 pounds and I haven't done it and all these things. And then I saw a picture of me when I first started wanting to take care of my weight and do something about it. And I lost 75 pounds from there. And sometimes, it's like this becomes our new normal.
Mhm.
And so we forget. And so I saw a picture of me and it was like, oh my gosh, I forgot. And so that's why
Wow.
when I tell my people when we're doing our affirmations and our journals to make sure we're journaling really well with the dates and all that stuff, because what we change and we grow into, it becomes our new normal. And sometimes we don't even recognize how far we've come, the magic that's happened in our lives. And the only way we know is we have some kind of measuring stick to see the difference, right? Whether it's a picture or it's looking at a journal. And,
Mhm.
and that can go with relationships too. Maybe it's a memory or a journal or a picture of something that was going on in your life. And for you, the measuring stick was how your life changed when all this went down with your mom,
Mhm.
and,
Mhm.
you can take it back to when your daughter was born, when you fell in love, all these different things become things we can go back and we can say, oh, wow, look at the difference between then and now. And
Mhm.
so that's why it's so important for us to have that little measuring stick so we can see the growth that we've produced in our lives.
Yeah, for sure. I found a picture of my brother and I standing in front of my parents' house. We had to sell their house. Well, we knew we were going to have to sell it because after my dad fell and he wasn't going to be able to go back home. So I flew out to California. Like it was just under a year after my mom died. And anyway, we had to clean the house out and sell it. And the very last night that I ever spent in my childhood home, I woke up to an earthquake at like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
And I know, and growing up in California, you go through a lot of earthquakes, but it was odd, right? And then the the cleaning people came, and the realtor had his crew came to take the rest of the stuff away that we couldn't get rid of. And my mom had Christmas alone, she had over 100 bins of just the Christmas stuff.
Oh, wow.
This
She
is a
was a
whole
little
other
ODC in a lot of places, wasn't she?
OCD. Yeah, she was a little bit of a hoarder. She was a little bit of, yeah. So going through that garage and that house, and oh my God, that's a whole story in and of itself. But anyway, that day after all that happened in the morning, then we got a call from the care facility where my dad had been, and they said that he had passed at like noon that day. And I just thought he would, if look at the universe or whatever, like my dad would go out with a bang, right? That earthquake, right, was like, I just
Yeah.
thought it was funny. So then on that day, there's a picture of me and my brother, and we're standing in front of the house. And my brother's always been, well, he hasn't always been thin, but he's never been heavy either. But at one point, because he has a lot of back problems, he decided to stop eating sugar. And he just stopped eating sugar, and he hasn't eaten sugar in like 10 years, which that's mind boggling to me. Even though I released weight, I still have chocolate and, things that I like, or I wouldn't have been able to do it. But anyway, this picture of us, I did not realize what I looked like 40 pounds heavier. I mean, I did and I didn't, when I saw that picture, it was like, wow, exactly what you said, just reminding me of how far I came in like the aftermath of all of that. Because when we were all in it, it was really stressful. And then, yeah, I saw that picture. And I've really 60 pounds from the heaviest I ever was. When I met Leslie, I fell in love and lost 25 pounds almost effortlessly.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like it's yo-yo kind of thing. But yeah, anyway, the point of all that being that seeing that evidence of how far, I had come was an affirmation
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
being on the
Yeah,
right
that's
path.
why I think it's really important. But and it's funny because the picture that I looked at is, I'm sure it's not my heaviest, because once I got to a certain weight, I hid behind people if I even got in the picture at all, because I felt
Mm,
like from here up, I was chunky, but you couldn't tell how heavy I was, you know.
mm,
And
mhm,
so it's really, and after a while, I got where I would take the pictures, I would do things to not be in the picture.
mhm,
And that's why I guess that one little thing I saw on Facebook or wherever it was that said, when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be saying, I wish I hadn't been walking around with those shorts with the jiggly thighs. I wish I hadn't, let people see that I had a gut, all those things. That's why that meant so much to me, was because, I was so heavy for, I had my bouts. I was a yo-yo dieter too. So it was like I had times I was thinner, and then I'd be really big, and then I'd be thinner. And so
mhm,
I finally got to the place where I said, "Oh, I've either got to make peace with being fat, or I got to figure something out. And what I want to do is just become naturally thin. I don't want it to be, I'm not on a diet. I'm not doing anything like that." So I started searching for a way to make that happen. That's when I became a health coach, was to
okay.
start doing it, because their thing was habit change. Is because
Uh-huh.
I didn't want somebody to tell me I can no longer ever, 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 ever eat a potato chip, or I can never, ever,
Right.
because when you do that, there's no way you can sustain that for your whole life. And that's why I
No.
would gain weight so many times, is because you sit down and you tell somebody that you can only eat these little portions, and you have to do it this time of day, and there's so much about it that it's like, I can't do that for the rest of my life. So I figured,
No.
okay, I got to do something. And that's why I've made peace with, my body's still changing. And, if I end up taking that weight, the rest of this weight off, I'm good. If I don't, I'm good too. And so it's a process, right?
Mhm. It is, yeah. And when
Yeah.
you look amazing.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Of course, you can only see me from here up.
Yeah, but no, that's the same. Like for me, it was sustainable this
Yeah. Yeah.
round with the hypnosis and the meditation and all that. support and with, just making, just tracking is really what the main thing that I did was tracking and exercise. And it's like, okay, well, this is, here's the data. This is how much you're actually, she gives this analogy of like, well, if you overfill your gas tank, what's going to happen is it's just all going to, spill out. And then you got to figure out, well, this is how much gas I need to get through the day. Right. And
Right.
then just stay in that little budget. And I just think of it as like my checking account, right? Well, this is how much I'm allowed today. And then I just write it down and there's no judgment about it, right? There's no
Right.
judgment
The main
against
thing is
myself
the
for,
judgment,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
yes.
definitely.
Yeah, the judgment and somebody setting you up and saying you can't have. Well, if that's like somebody says, don't think about an elephant, you're going to think about what else are you
That's
going to think
right.
about
That's right.
except what you can't have,
Yeah, yeah. I know. It's a process that we go through, and when we finally figure it out, it's like so freeing,
Yeah.
Not to say that you don't still have doubts and things that pop up in your head, because they do, and that's perfectly normal. Hell, we're human, right?
hmm Yeah, I
So,
feel like that was one of the hidden gifts too, is that I never thought I would be able to do this. And it was just all these things just
mm-hmm. Yeah.
cascaded from,
Yeah, all the
you know,
synchronicities of life. And,
transformation.
it's
Yes.
it's getting to, I think when we get to a place where we're open to them, because they're always there, we're just not
Mhm.
noticing them so we can take advantage of them and pull them into us. Like you go in and having that I Ching reading, you
Yeah.
had to be in the right place at the right time and then make the decision to say, yeah, I think I'll do that.
hmm
So that just means you were open. So a week
Yeah.
before that, you might have been closed and not taken the
Yeah.
advice, so
Right.
things happen when they're supposed
Yeah.
to.
You said when you were talking about when you're at the end of life, you're not going to re wish that you know what you said, right?
Yeah.
Somebody else I just heard recently was saying about the odds of us even being here at all. And I can't remember what it was, but the odds of you coming into this body and being here in this time and place is like, I don't know, 1,000,000 to 1 or 1,000,000,000 to 1 or something
Probably
like
more
that.
like a billion.
Probably more like 1,000,000,000. And
Yeah.
that really like
Yeah.
struck me, like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So don't take it for granted and
Right.
you
And
know,
accept and honor the little things that have created all of that,
mhm,
from when your parents met, if they hadn't met, be
exactly.
totally different Julie
Exactly.
there. And your name might have been Deborah. Who knows?
Yeah. Hey, if I was a boy, my name was gonna be Gordon.
Oh,
I know.
well, I'm glad you became
Oh,
Julie.
I am so glad I was a girl. Gordon Richard, after some hockey player.
Oh my goodness.
Thank God I was a girl.
That's too funny. That's too funny.
I know. Oh my
So
gosh.
after your dad passed, and
Mhm,
that's when you kind of had this urge to start. Well, you were writing things down all along, right?
mhm.
And
Yeah,
then afterwards, that's when it's like you thought, I've got to get all of this out, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's when, so talk me through that when you decided that you just had to get this voice out. So did
Yeah.
you go into a group? I think did you go into Stacy's Find Your Voice challenge?
I did. I went before that. So I journaled my way through that whole thing, and there were so many odd synchronicities and whatnot that happened that I just at the end of the day I would just write. I would just write everything down because I knew I didn't want to forget any of it. And it was almost like I was taking class notes through the whole thing.
Yeah,
And then I ended up having an end of life doula that worked with me because the year after my mom, I grieved my mom in very differently than from my dad. We
right.
did not have the same relationship. So after my mom died, I was in like heavy grief for a year. And, I'm not somebody who even cries very easily, but I would find myself just sobbing in my hot tub at night, and just, it would just hit me. And I would like hear a song and it would, so I started kind of doing this deep dive on death on the internet. And I discovered this group of end of life doulas. And I kind of knew in a way I knew that there was such a thing because, I had been very interested in having a birth doula and having a home birth when I didn't get to. I had a C-section, but, and I thought, well, we're like the opposite. We're like end of life doulas. But then I found out there really is an end of life doula. And so I reached out to them and to this one particular group. Deanna Cochran is the woman who started this. It's called Quality of Life care, I think. Anyway, I reached out to her and I said, I want to be an end-of-life doula. And she said, you might not be ready. Your loss is very recent. Why don't you, work? So as a kind of an internship for the doulas in training, you could work one-on-one with a doula, and every week you get to talk to someone for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people probably would use that while they were going through the loss or if they themselves were dying. But for me, it was after the fact, and it was absolutely amazing. And her name was Roxanne, and she would listen to me every Sunday for an hour, just talk about what was happening and what had happened. And I would tell her these stories, and she just gave me so much validation. And at that time, and this is what made me want to start a podcast, was that talking about it was the most healing thing for me to get through that loss. And she said, you should go on the Moth Radio Hour, or you should start a podcast, or you've got to write this stuff down, these stories, you just can't make this stuff up. And I thought, yeah, I do want to start a podcast, because since I need to talk about this, I bet a lot of other people need to talk about it. But I didn't start a podcast for 3 years, and I took a memoir class, which was awesome. Like, it was a 3-month class, and it gave you just all kinds of like experience, and you'd share in a Facebook group and how to structure it. And there were a lot of lives and a lot of information. So I'd been working on that too. But then it was not until I found Stacy's Find Your Voice that, because I was like, well, I've done that. I had just lost the weight and I was feeling really good about that, but I was still feeling like I still don't feel like I've quite done what I want to do, which is, and find your voice. So I was like, oh my God, that's what it is. Still got to find my voice. So I did that. And that was what led me to start the podcast finally. And also get back into the memoir. I had kind of let it go. I had put it away for a while. And I think that's a really normal thing too. When you're writing about a loss, when you go through a loss and you're trying to write about it, sometimes you just have to walk away. And all of a sudden life had started to feel normal to me again. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to think about this right now. Life is feeling normal and good, and I'm having fun, and I'm doing things with my daughter, and I got a camper, and we drove it all the way up to the UP, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that is how I ended up at Find Your Voice, and how I'm finally ready this year to submit this memoir piece to this contest, which is put on by my memoir teacher.
Oh,
And it's called the Amy
nice.
Award, and it honors this woman, Amy McRae, who was in one of Allison Waring's workshops and ended up with uterine cancer and passed away at the age of 34. So Allison Waring, whose memoir class I was in, started this award in honor of Amy McRae, and there's all the proceeds go to her foundation.
Okay.
So yeah, that was a
Yeah.
long answer. But anyway, yeah, so that's how that all started. And I've done 10 podcast episodes. And it's interesting because another thing I never would have thought of doing or had the courage to do or any of it had I not gone through this
Mm-hmm.
experience,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love all the synchronicities. I do. And even when some of them are sad synchronicities, it's still something that is from God, the universe, just pushing you like, come me this way, go that way, come over here, go
Mhm.
there, and it's just a beautiful
Oh,
dance, right?
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I like to
Yeah.
say we have musical notes, and I can just feel the notes just floating around, and sometimes they're coming in and sometimes they're going away, but they create this symphony in our life that makes it beautiful music, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do people connect with you? And just so everybody knows, because we're getting close to time, that I will have a description. And when I put the description in there, I'll have all the links of everything. But if you want to tell them really quick, the name of the podcast, how they can reach out, that kind of thing, then just share.
Sure. So it's called the Hidden Gifts of Loss podcast. And right now I only have it on Spotify. I know I need to learn how to push it out to the other platforms, but I haven't done it yet. Also, my Facebook community is the Hidden Gifts of Loss Facebook community, and you can uh, go there and I think you have to actually let me know if you want a invitation, and then you can join that community, which is just a place for people who've been on the podcast or anybody who's been through a lot and just wants a place to connect. And on Instagram, I don't do much on Instagram, but it's at JT Goddess, JTGODDESS. Yeah, I think that's
All right,
all the ways you
beautiful.
can
Well, like I
connect
said,
with me.
I will have all the information there. So is there one last thing that you really wanted to say before you got on here that maybe I didn't touch on?
It's a good question. Um, and now my mind is going blank, but I think what I would say is like, if you're going through something in your life and you're struggling and it's hard to see that something's ever going to get better. I think I said this before, but this was something that really helped me, was just find one good thing. If that's all
Yeah.
you can do, and if you've got a cat, love on that cat, right? If it's sunny outside, go outside, touch the earth. Just find one good thing, and you can move through
Yeah.
whatever, and you can come out, and things can be better, even if it doesn't seem like it right now.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being here today. And I'm going to leave everybody with one of my favorite quotes. And I know somebody has told me who said the quote, but I do not remember who it was. The best way to predict the future is create it. So I ask, what are you creating? And with that, I will say thank you all for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again. Mwah.